Hey everybody, welcome to Love and Relo, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and we have a fantastic program for you today. We have a wonderful guest, Mark from Hilton. He's the global manager of mobility for them. We've also really quick want to shout out our book club book of the month for the month of August. Take Control of Your Job Search, written by Lauren Herring, the CEO of the Impact Group. We will be discussing this book live here on the air on August 31st. So if you want to join us and you want a free copy, Lauren's giving away free copies of the book. Just, private message me, private message Janet, and we will get you all set up. I think we have 1 or 2 spots left. So let's get you signed up for that. Also want to go ahead and thank our sponsor real quick. Our sponsor today is OnQ. OnQ's running a fabulous 2020 Mover Summer Games, and their closing ceremony is coming up this week. I think it's Thursday, so save your spot today. The URL is a tiny URL, tinyurl.com/watch OnQ down at the bottom. It is not too late to enter to win $500 first place. Second place is $250. Third place is $100. All you got to do is upload a picture from your move. I think Mark might have a couple of those pictures. We'll get into that here in a bit, but definitely check that out. You get to actually meet Chris Mullen virtually in a Zoom style webinar. So check out that. Thanks to OnQ and all the people over there. Shout out to Kate DeWall. Without further ado, let's bring out Mark. Mark, how are you doing today?
Hey, how you doing, Ben? Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
I'm so excited to have you here. Mark Bicocchi, Senior Manager, Global Mobility, Hilton Worldwide. This has been great. I've been talking to you for a couple of years now. We tried to do some things with ERC and some things over the years, and I'm so honored to have you on the program. You've got some fantastic experience and insights. But real quick, there's a contest going on that OnQ, our sponsor, is doing to upload a picture of your move, and you just moved personally, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Well, first of all, I want to say it's my pleasure. I really appreciate you contacting me, and I know I remember the first time we met, I think it was at a YP40 event at ERC. It might have been the first ERC I went to, but years ago. But and gosh, I don't qualify anymore, unfortunately. But I think it was a year or two before I hit the threshold there. But no, I really appreciate you having me on. I think what you're doing is great here with these segments and these sessions. Yeah, I did, and you got my last name correct, which is great too, because it's not an easy one.
It tripped me up. It tripped me up in the beginning. You heard me say, "I got Mark. I got Mark."
It's not an easy one, and believe it or not, when I was growing up, all my friends back in the day used to just call me Broccoli because that was just the easy way to go about it. But yes, I did move recently. I moved locally just a couple of weeks ago. I only moved two miles away, but as we were chatting before, it definitely puts into perspective the support and service you're providing for an employee, especially as a corporate manager of a program, and then go through it yourself. Even though it's local, it's not the same as cross country or internationally, but it went well. It's just
it's different, right? Isn't it different when it's your move?
Yeah, and as stressful as it can be, with still the amount of boxes that I got to go through and kids stuff and purging and all of that. If you think mentally of the all the other things that someone deals with internationally on top of that, with the immigration, the tax, the temp living, the home search, the school search, that all that sort of stuff, boy, is that a burden. And so it actually made me feel even more gracious and better for my employees that I support, and a couple of them I happened to even talk to the day I was moving about their upcoming moves. So yeah, it really definitely sets the stage a bit for you to be able to appreciate what everyone's going through.
It's always interesting when reloads, and the insights that we get out of it. I think we deal with it every day, and I think we become desensitized to what people are going through, to your point. And then when it's your stuff, it's like, oh my God, everything's a huge deal, but when it's your transferee or something, you're like, okay, this happens, it's moving 20% of stuff, 20% of the time there's damage or whatever. But like when it's your stuff, it's like the end of the world. We got people checking in right now. This is fantastic. Go ahead and give Mark a like, throw a comment, give yourself a shout out. We're going to go through here real quick and say what's up to everybody. If you've got questions for Mark, I mean, he's got a global program. It's a big program. There's a lot of questions out there, I'm sure. So go ahead and leave them and we will get to most of them. Lisa checking in from San Diego. We got Tila checking in. Hi, Mark.
Hey, Tila.
It's okay. You're not going to say hi to me too.
Yeah. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Miriam.
Miriam checking in from the Netherlands. Francine from the Lou. Lisa Thomas.
Hello.
Ben and Mark. Jane Woolston checking in.
Wow, great to see everybody. Very nice. Hey, Russ. Yeah.
Russ Bill. Russ never comes around. See, Russ, I see you, Russ. Okay. Drew Phillips, good afternoon. Ben and Mark from the Bay.
Great. Really nice.
Coming in from the UK. This is great. We got 30 people or so on LinkedIn right now.
Wow.
Trusty checking in. Let's see. Dick Scaffa. Hi, Ben and Mark from very stormy South Jersey and a Hilton Diamond member.
Hey, glad to hear that. And I'm from North Jersey originally, so that's a double plus there. Like that.
Are you still in the New York metro area?
No, I'm in Northern Virginia, just outside of DC, in Loudoun County. So our building. I'm at the corporate headquarters for Hilton, which is in McLean, Virginia, but haven't stepped foot in the building since mid-March. So from what we're hearing, I think all indications are perhaps there might be a mild reopening before the end of the year where there's like maybe a phased-in approach, but all indications are likely looking toward more of next year. Phase in. And of course, there's still so much we don't know, as far as reopening. So yeah, it's gonna take a while. So I've been enjoying the work from home and, and then who knows, maybe it could get back to a situation where it's like, you go in 2 or 3 days a week, work from home 1 or 2 and, and that could be nice. So I've usually technically liked going into the building and I like being around people and I'm a very social person, so I like seeing folks, and I feel like going into work, you feel better, you work better, but at the same time, I can't complain. It hasn't been bad working from home, so I'm getting used to it.
I feel like the irony is everybody in Relo wants everybody to Relo except for them. Everybody wants to stay home and work from home. It's like, okay, let's get everybody back to the office except for me. I'm good here. Don't worry about me. I'm making files. Now I got a question. Worst traffic, DC or New York?
I'd say DC. New York's pretty bad, and obviously New York, you got, there's certain routes within New York that can really just get congested. Plus, you think of a place like the Cross Bronx Expressway that is so bumpy, and I mean, forget it. You'll get a pothole just being on there, or you'll get a flat tire just being on there for a few miles. But DC, the issue is that the suburbs are all so active as almost little cities,
right?
That surround DC. I mean, you've got little cities that surround the whole Beltway that have town centers and all types of areas that a lot of folks that live in those suburbs don't even ever go into the city. So if you think about that, besides work, so if you think about that, that back and forth through the Beltway, with so many folks living just outside and it being a very functional area to live, I'd say it's worse. But I'll tell you, I haven't seen anything like what I've seen over the 6 months being on the Dulles Toll Road or 495, the Beltway, and just seeing no cars on there. It's really eerie and something we'll never see again. So it's kind of interesting, but pretty bad traffic.
Let's see here. We got Gerald checking in from Boston. Hosea from Seattle. Let's see. Marianne checking in from California. Look at this. Janet Turner. Janet, where are you hiding? Checking in from Francine there. Tim Quirk out in Western New York. Checking in. We got Love and Relo and Rio over there. Janaina.
Wow. Yeah, we got people from all over. This is great.
Look at this. Columbus is in the house. What's up, Erica? The buzzball queen of Central Ohio. There we go. Olivia with Prime Communication. Olivia Bakrami, that was on yesterday. Fantastic. Russ Builder, only because Mark is on. Well, obviously, Russ, obviously. I love when people come out of the woodwork. Distinguished guests. That's great. Yeah, so guys, ask your questions. We're going to answer them. I've got some for Mark as well. Mark, I want to start here because, when we've been trying to do something and collaborate on something for a long time. And I remember, I had the opportunity to host a session for ERC. And as part of that kind of discovery process, I reached out to you. And at that point, you were still kind of in the middle of a major global mobility and HR transformation at your company at Hilton. And I think it was too early at that point, but I'd love to revisit the learnings maybe from that process. And so can you just kind of set the stage for maybe, how you guys did global mobility in the past? And then let's kind of talk through maybe how it transformed and what some of the learnings were.
Sure. Yeah. No, thanks for bringing that up. And I remember, I distinctly remember that conversation too, when we were talking about it. And believe it or not, it's still, regardless of what's gone on with COVID-19, it's still, believe it or not, somewhat a work in progress. And, I think up until about 5-6 years ago, when I came aboard, and even a little bit prior to that, we were heavily decentralized from a mobility perspective. So if you think about that, we had roughly about pre-COVID 400,000 employees worldwide.
Wow.
Probably about 90 to 95% of those are hotel operations folks. Excuse me if you hear my dog in the background. I might need to get him a treat.
Sorry, we like dogs. He can make a cameo too. It's fine.
If you don't mind, I'm just going to grab him a treat so he doesn't whine.
Yeah, that's fine. No
One
problem.
second.
Just live. It's a live program. That's all. No big deal. Yeah. So these are the jokes. Hey, let's get some shout outs real quick. DC is more confusing from Francine. Robert Mazel. Hello from New York City. Please avoid New York City traffic. Hey, shout out to Rob also getting me and Mark back together. So that was really cool. You, Mark.
Oh yeah. Rob. Hey, Rob.
Yeah. Right.
That's great. Sorry about that.
Shelly, we got a first time caller here, Shelly Lloyd, first Love and Relo live session.
Great.
Wow, you really bring them out. Anyway, so yeah, back to what you were saying though.
Yeah,
400,000 employees worldwide.
Yeah, and obviously that's changed a lot. It's been reduced, unfortunately, quite a bit. But since COVID, and because our industry has gotten pretty crushed by the pandemic, and a lot of our revenue has gone down, the RevPAR, or the amount of folks staying at the hotels, obviously went from somewhere between 70-75% globally down to even, I think, 10 at one point globally. And now, luckily, we're seeing signs of things improving globally, specifically starting in Asia Pac, and then even in the US, we've seen some recovery. So that's good. But back to the mobility program. Prior to that, it was a heavily decentralized program. So essentially, what we were doing was mobility was run at that time out of our UK office in Watford, outside of London. And essentially, what we were doing for mobility, and a lot of hospitality companies lump it this way, they have mobility under the benefits umbrella. And what was happening was we were processing international benefits and retirement for expats. Everything else, the move itself, relocation, tax, immigration, home search, school search, temp living, all that stuff was being coordinated locally by a local corporate office, or specifically by the hotel.
And how many countries had these offices? These
Well,
local
so
offices are.
corporate offices, we had 6 globally, roughly 6, and 2 or 3 of those are in the U.S. because we have kind of a sister corporate office in Memphis, and then we have a few others, Dallas. But other than that, we'd have Dubai, Singapore, Watford in the UK, and those would be the ones that would help coordinate the corporate moves. But then the hotel moves would pretty much be handled out of the hotel office. So if you think about it, Mr. John Doe, owner of the hotel, whether that's an individual person who could be very rich, or could be a real estate investment trust, or it could be a company, it could be a series of companies partially owning the hotel. So any way you dice it, those folks would essentially, the rule of thumb was to have the team member go out and get 3 quotes from a moving company.
We've seen that. I'm very familiar with those types of situations. My company's moving me. I need to get 3 bids. They're going to choose the lowest. What do you got for me?
Yeah, and so no real centralization. No real area to store data and to look at data. Tax providers were usually local, if that. A lot of the offers and agreements that we have, particularly on the hotel side, and this is pretty typical for hospitality companies and expats, are what we'd call net pay packages. So a lot of times the taxes are actually paid for by the hotel owner and through their finance office to the authority, so that the general manager of that hotel, if they're an expat, many times doesn't even see the taxes, doesn't have to account for it. So they're just paid net, which is a pretty nice deal, and a way to sort of incentivize somebody to go into that industry and take on that type of role if they have that particular talent. So back then, that's kind of how it was going, and it worked well. I mean, for the most part, it worked well for the regions, for the hotels, for our corporate offices, but there was no centralization. And as we
did you find that like standardization was a problem? I mean, was it actually presenting a problem where people were saying, well, this hotel you're offered me, this package at one point, and I hear, Jane Doe over here's got this. And I mean, was standardization a problem, or was the administration of it just all over the place, or was it not having expertise around it and it was kind of ad hoc? I mean, what was the driver around change?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a lot of those things. Ultimately, when our company moved from being headquartered there were a few things that took place. We were headquartered in Beverly Hills, California, years ago for a long time. In 2009, they moved the headquarters to McLean. We had a new CEO. A lot of the folks from Beverly Hills didn't come over. There was also Hilton International, which was based out of the UK, which was a separate company. We then were purchased by Blackstone and essentially all kind of put together under one roof. And when that happened, the folks from corporate tried to put a little more centralization around a lot of things. So it wasn't just mobility; it was a lot of things out there. And so for us in HR, there were a lot of areas where we wanted to try and see where we could have oversight and be able to help and support all of our businesses, whether they're corporate or hotel operations, and hotel operations obviously being the bread and butter of our business. So that was kind of the big driver.
So corporate really drove that change, and strategically, was that because they wanted to achieve those economies of scale that are often sought after an acquisition, or because they wanted to increase some sort of employee experience, that they identified as being an opportunity? Which do you think might have been the bigger?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned that. Employee experience, I think, was the biggest, and it's because why would you want to go send somebody out to go get 3 quotes? And I mean, we're a company that prides itself off of culture, hospitality, grace, doing the right thing, helping. So so what we try to do is say, hey, if we can utilize one RMC globally and go ahead and just utilize, that notion, boy, would that be a game changer for everybody out there. Now, we thought it was a really easy plug and play over the course of maybe a year or two, but it just turned out to be a lot more challenging. And let me back up a step. Our domestic program was centralized and had been for years. So our domestic reload was working very well and still is to this day. Obviously, things have slowed down because of COVID, both domestic and internationally, but it'll pick back up at some point, and we'll see more moves. But to then plug and play that internationally was just not easy, and it requires the buy-in of so many stakeholders out there, particularly in the regions that are the heads of HR in those regions, and it required kind of a sales pitch, so to speak. Kind of like, well, it's been working well for years. Why do we need to change it?
Did you underestimate maybe the undertaking afoot there?
Oh yeah, no question about it. No question about it. I started my career with Marriott for 5 years, but I wasn't in mobility. I was in risk management, and then I went to mobility with Lockheed Martin. I was with Lockheed Martin 10 years in mobility. And they had a very, very solid program, still do, with a lot of expats out there, but most of them are all U.S. outbound because they're a U.S.-based company with international pursuits. Now they have a much bigger, larger international presence. But then I came to Hilton, and because I wanted to get back into hospitality, and boy, it was quite enlightening, because you have to get back in the mindset that it's a U.S. company that started in the U.S., but it also had split out at a certain point to have Hilton International. And so you have to be very respectful of the cultural attitudes and unwillingness or resistance to change out there that can be valid. I mean, I went out to Singapore to our office there and tried to implement a lot of the new changes, and I found out a lot about legacy practices, legacy policy that existed, and things that were working well. And and
you're facing company culture and different country culture.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I think when I went over there, I was like, oh, I'll just train everybody. We'll get like on the new policy, and we'll get it going. But I probably should have brought my bulletproof vest with me. And but no, I have to say, everybody there was so hospitable, and just again enlightened me a lot about the various practices that have been going on for years that work. So it's a delicate balance between trying to allow some of those practices to still exist, while also imputing or inputting some of our new policies and procedures as well. And we've been able to work it so that in many cases, some local practices can still take shape. If they have a realtor that they like to use there locally that they've used for years in home search, if they have a temp living accommodation corporate suite that they're utilizing there in APAC that they use for everybody and it's going well, we want to allow that to continue to happen while also balancing us doing the household goods shipment or coordinating airfare and doing some of the other things. So we've harmonized it in a way where we can make everybody happy and also trying to achieve some level of centralization, although we don't have it completely there yet. And once I kind of grasped what was going on, I thought that this is probably not something that can happen for a long time, but can we at least in the interim look at a situation where we can get some technology to at least get all the data, right? And so that's still something that we're working on.
So this is fascinating, because this is like a real life case study where you do, global business transformation or HR transformation across continents. I mean, this is really fascinating stuff. And if you're watching this right now, I want you to leave your questions, leave your comments. We're going to get to them in the second half hour. Once we I want to finish this story, and I have a bunch of questions for you too, Mark. So go ahead and leave those in the comments. We're going to get to those. So Mark, you talked about this probably was more of a sales job than you anticipated. In sales, we know that there's objections and then there's rebuttals. What were some of the common objections you faced when you stood before them and you thought you were just going to say, here's the memo and here's what we're doing now? What were some of the objections you faced, and what were some of the learnings and maybe ways that you overcame those objections for the global mobility managers out there that are trying to transform their organizations?
Yeah, no, good question. I think coming from a government contractor before, we were not overly, I'd say overly generous with exceptions or deviations, because there's an allowability piece to it, where some things can't be charged back to a contract. Mm-hmm. So then moving into a commercial world with Hilton, I saw much more in the range of exceptions, whether it's shipping somebody's grill or, getting all kinds of requests, if they want to repatriate by boat, or,
repatriate by boat. You mean take a cruise back home?
Yeah, back home. So you get, and I'm not saying we did that. I'm just saying you get requests at times. And so I tended to see a lot more in the realm of exceptions that had been made, requests that had been made where we had been either just giving it, and not at times recording it somewhere, or making sure that we have it covered for audit in case of audit. So we had to kind of look back and make sure that we were capturing everything. I think we did a good job of doing that. So I think that was number one. I mean, some of the things I was seeing with regard to folks, I don't want to say free for all, but there's, a lot of things outside of package and policy. So we built a governing document policy. It's over 100 pages that outlines all our specific packages out there for all the different program types, under both corporate and hotel operations moves.
It's like almost like a relocation handbook where you're like thinking about every scenario, kind of almost.
And then it puts some parameters around what's typical, but also allows for some flexibility where a local practice, may not have that in place. For example, I'll give you a very quick example: education reimbursement. We have folks in particular countries where they go, and we can't just expect that their children attend public school there if they don't speak the language, and maybe the public schools just aren't up to speed, with the country where they came from previously. So we have to understand that, and particularly in a situation where it's not an assignment, where they're going to be there with an intent to return, but a permanent transfer, where they're then going to become a local. We have to look at ways, and we've been looking at them, where maybe somebody can go to an international school and we can reimburse for that for a couple of years. But then once they get to the point where that child is able to sort of adapt to the local situation, maybe learn the local language, and if the public schools at some point in time improve, or they're able to find that, then we can phase that out so that it's not where we're covering this person's schooling up until they're 18, but we're at least trying to reach a happy medium for them.
What is the average duration of an assignment for an overseas assignment for you? What do you see typically?
For us, typically it's about 3 years. And it's interesting on our corporate side, typically 2 to 3 years. Sometimes we'll extend to 4 or so, but at that time we usually like to say, let's think about either localizing or returning back home. On the hotel operations side, I'd say it's usually about 3 years or so, but it really depends. And those cases are quite unique because a corporate move for us, so myself, let's say a corporate employee, and I'm going to our corporate office in the UK to work for 3 years. Pretty run-of-the-mills case, I'm over there for 3 years. I'm working, I stay on US payroll, I'm tax equalized, and I have an intent to return. With our hotel ops moves, let's say I was a general manager in Russia, and now I'm going to go be a general manager in China. In that case, I won't stay on Russian payroll. I'm going to go to China, be on Chinese payroll in that hotel. So there's kind of no home country tie. Those general managers and folks that go on those assignments are typically going to that country. They're there for 2-3 years, and then they hop to the next country, and then the next country, run the next hotel, next hotel. So we kind of call them global nomads. So it's more of a unique situation where they go and host payroll, but they're still getting some of the assignment related items, depending.
So my last question before we go into the audience questions, and this is, everybody out there that's watching, please go ahead and leave your questions and comments in there. We're going to spend the second half hour here answering those. My last question is, it sounds like once you kind of encountered a little bit of resistance, or maybe some things popped up that maybe you didn't foresee, it sounds like you adopted a phased approach. How did you phase that in, and what was the thought process behind that?
Yeah, I think, we had to kind of switch gears and just take a step back and reevaluate soup to nuts the entire program. So versus just a quick plug and play, we looked at what are the things we can start with. So let's start with corporate moves. Let's not touch hotel operations. Let's let them do that locally, and it works well. So let's do it. And let's also look at whatever data we can collect now, have it flow through our MC, or even run it ourselves internally. Let's highlight the moves and what what's going on in each corporate move, and try to give that information to our leadership so that they have exposure to how those moves are going, what are some of the trends we're seeing. And then, ultimately, I think cost is such a huge factor with any company, but particularly with us, and especially in the hospitality industry. A lot of these owners, hotels, the ones I was talking about earlier, their margins are so small that if you think about the salaries that some of the front desk people and bellmen or concierges receive in some of these really tiny countries out there, the margins are so tight that the fees that we place out for every expat that's on assignment that we charge out to those hotels, let's find a way that we can reduce cost to those hotels and corporate offices. So we found a way where we could be smart about reducing some fees based on the services that they're receiving. If they're not receiving the full gamut of services from the corporate mobility staff, then they shouldn't have to pay a full fee as if they would. And so we had to kind of puzzle our way through all of that, but it resulted in a good savings for our businesses. So, and it came at a good time because it came earlier this year, right before COVID. So that helped out a lot.
Nice. That's awesome. That's awesome. Really quick, we're going to go thank our sponsor, and then we're going to get to the questions. On cue, meet basketball legend Chris Mullin. Join us at the 2020 Movers Summer Games closing ceremony with moving industry experts Adam Lowy for Moon for Hunger and Greg Shepard of USA Home Listings. If you want to enter to win $500 in the On-Cue Summer Games, you can go down to the bottom, tinyurl.com/love500, or register to watch Chris Mullin and Adam Lowy announce winners Thursday at tinyurl.com/watch-on-cue. Register today to check that out. Awesome. Love giving away money. That's so cool. All right. Back to you, Mark. Let's go ahead and check in with the folks who have been patient for us. Oh, gosh, let's see. We got a ton of great comments here. Love all these here. Let's see. Where do we begin? Shout out to Rob. Laura saying the Cross Bronx is ridiculous. Yes, let's see. We've got a dog love out here. All right.
they don't want to see he's a Chihuahua, and sometimes when I pick him up, he's like, yeah, he's a little temperamental. So.
That's a quiet Chihuahua, though. I gotta say. I mean, that's pretty good.
He's sleeping right now, as long as nobody rings the doorbell.
Nice. If you're in Mark's neighborhood, go ring the doorbell. Question for Mark: what's Hilton's outlook on relocation within Canada? Will you be resuming relocations this year, or wait until next year at the earliest?
Yeah, on relocation within Canada, I mean, we've had a few, and I've managed a few into Canada and into the U.S. from Canada. I think overall, we have resumed a few relocations internationally so far. Within the last few months, we've seen a small tick of moves, and I think by next year we'll probably see a larger uptick. But as of right now, I think it's very small onesie twosies that we've seen out there that I've managed. Into Canada specifically, like I said, I haven't seen any so far since COVID hit, where I've managed any that are into Canada or out. But I did have some last year that I recall, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens. I think it's gonna come back. I think domestically we've seen already a couple that have started back up again. So. Just fingers crossed that things can get better here.
Awesome. Let's see, Simon Johns with some very astute observations. Love that. Zenaida, what's up? Kristen, what's up? Meg, hi from Atlanta. I have to ask.
Nice.
Mark, what Hilton hotel and where is your favorite?
Yeah, that's a good question. One that I've enjoyed going to a few times. I don't know if it's my favorite, but for some reason I really like it. It's the Hilton Bonnet Creek down in Orlando. It's just got a nice little bar, great pool, it's got the what do they call that around the pool?
Lazy river, like a lazy river.
Lazy river, just great service. I don't know if it's the most mesmerizing hotel I've been to, but I've just really, really enjoyed my stays there. What else? The
Waldorf Astoria down in Fort Myers. I think it's outside of Fort Myers. Is that right?
Oh yeah,
it's gorgeous.
Is that nice?
Yeah, I've dropped 60,000 points on that one.
Yeah, makes sense. I'd say the other one I really enjoyed was the Conrad in Singapore.
Oh.
Beautiful, beautiful property, great service. I just recently stayed at the Conrad in Washington, D.C., which is brand new, and that was also very nice. I hear the Waldorf in Rome is beautiful. But yeah, what's that?
I said it sounds lovely. Yeah, the Waldorf in Rome.
Yeah, it's but yeah, the Bonnet Creek for some reason I really enjoy, and then I'd say the Conrad in Singapore was great.
Nice, great recommendations. Let's see, Nathan checking in. He's a Diamond member. That's what's up. Michael Bilodeau checking in. Gabby's always got the good questions. She's got real questions here. What top three skills or attributes would you say lead to success in a fast-paced, complex global mobility role like yours? Great discussion. Thank you.
Very good question. Very good question. Thanks, Gabby. I would say number one is building relationships. Be willing to build, solid, lasting relationships with your stakeholders. Treat them as if they are your clients and your customers. One of the things I see a lot, I've seen from people I've either reported to or managed, is sometimes you get a question to you and it's like, that's not my job, and you point the finger some other way, versus a happy to help, let me go find that out for you. I always feel like a global mobility professional is a jack of many trades, master of none, but also a kind of connector of all the dots. So even if we don't know the answer, we have to make sure that we're a relationship builder. And I get all the time people coming to me saying, "I know you're the guy that knows," and I'm like, "No, I'm not, but I can help you." And
I know a guy. I'm not the guy, but I know a guy.
Yeah. So I'd say that's number one. Number two is try and always, grow and try to become a subject matter expert in some of the facets of it. So know the policy in and out and backwards, so that when you're talking to your stakeholders and your consultants that are coming to you to go ahead and ensure that that they have, they're getting a good knowledge base, and that you're preserving your value between, a lot of times we're an intermediary between the suppliers that we engage and the HR professionals and others that and the assignees and the relocators. We don't ever want to give a perception that there's no reason why a supplier shouldn't just be able to go to HR directly or whatever. We want to preserve our value in the middle. And so having that knowledge and that expertise is really important. And the third thing I'd say is treat all your suppliers like they're an extension of your team. I've worked for leaders in the past that have not gone about it that way, and managed people who've not gone about it that way. I've been a firm believer. I have also had leaders in the past who've done an excellent job of understanding the notion that our suppliers are an extension of our team. And while we have to hold them accountable, they are motivated to do a great job based on those clients that are near and dear to them. So I think that building that relationship is really key. So those are the three things I'd say.
Those 3 points, like, you didn't even prep that, but that was amazing. Okay, I'm gonna go backwards to forwards on that one. The third point about managing your suppliers like they're an extension of your team. You know how many global mobility professionals I see that are overwhelmed, that are up to their eyeballs in alligators, that are just like, I don't know what to do. I got so much on my plate. And it's like, use your supply chain. They are experts in each thing, and a lot of them are sitting around like just combing their hair all day, and they could be working on your behalf. It's like, so use them. We're experts. Yeah. We're available, and that's what we get paid for. So I ask all my clients that all the time. I love that, right? And the first point, I thought was fantastic about creating relationships, because I think when I hear global mobility professionals, the other thing that they're always asking is like, how do I get more influence within my organization? How do I get a seat at the table? How do I move from tactical to strategic? And I think that leap to strategic is really learning who in your organization you can leverage, how you can be included in conversations. And the way you get included in conversations is through relationships, of people knowing that they can tap you, to your second point about being a resource, knowing that they can tap you and you're going to find the answer for them. So fantastic, Mark.
No, thanks. You're absolutely right. I think that the more you're out there and build those relationships and get known, one of the things I've done is try and have just coordinate a call with some of your regional stakeholders, whether it's domestic or international, and every month or two, and just touch base on what their problems are, their what they need. I think that just helps get your name out there, and then people can come to you, and you're preserving your own value, your brand, and so forth. So yeah, right. I agree with you.
Right. Shout out to Vinnie. What's up, Vinnie?
Hey, Vinnie.
Shelly's getting a ton of value out of this. She says, what are the best qualities you expect from a global mobility partner? So this kind of goes the other way, right? So what are the qualities you're looking for in a service provider? Price, quality, IT-based service delivery, personal service. Give some examples there, but I'd love to hear in your own words, what are you looking for in a partner?
Yeah, sure. I'd say obviously all of those are really important. In our world at Hilton, I'd say the personal service is number one. Price is always obviously important too, but that white glove service, and I'm preaching to the choir here, but everybody knows that there could be a million things that go right in a move. If one little thing goes wrong, I mean, if it's grandma's, Christmas bulbs and ornaments that got broken, and they've been in the family for 100 years, that's going to crush the entire family, and just it's going to say,
you're breaking grandma's bulbs over here. What are you doing? You can't go doing that, right? I mean,
so it's just and it's how you respond to something like that. We've been lucky to work with a partner who's been really, really great in helping us out, and in different areas, in tax, immigration, relo. But I'd say, that personal service and touch, white glove treatment, specifically when we set the expectation. What I usually do is if there's a particular VIP, I'll make a phone call to the RMC, all the tax provider, and I'll just kind of go over, this is a very influential leader in our business. This is going to have to be, so set the expectations up front. So I'd say, Shelley, to your point, all those are important. Price is obviously huge also, but personal service, it's got to go really well, or else forget it. Most of the people we move are either general managers at hotels or SVPs or vice presidents of specific functional areas within corporate. They have the ear of our chief officers out there, and if something goes wrong, they won't be shy to give them a call. So
well, and they have high standards because they're in the hospitality business, right? They're used
Correct.
to the road rising up to meet them, right? As the old Irish toast goes, right? So it's like,
Correct.
You got a high standard to meet there now. But I will say to Shelley and the other service providers, defense here is a lot of us offer amazing service, but how do we distinguish ourselves? A lot of us offer white glove service, right? And a lot of us take that VIP call, sit up straight, and roll out the red carpet when we need to for those influential people. But how do we distinguish ourselves for someone like you in the marketplace?
Yeah, that's a good one. One of the things we started to try and do for a couple of our folks that were very influential leaders undergoing big moves with their families was, and it was a great idea from my VP, was how about, trying to find out what their kids are interested in, what their family's interested in, and providing a gift that is there at their temp living spot when they arrive. But not just a gift of flowers and which is great too, but like maybe a book for the kids, depending on what they're interested in, if they like baseball or Paw Patrol or whatever it is, like a very personal touch gift. If that person, those folks like wine, or you could look at a nice wine bottle, particularly from the area of where they're going to, and researching and making the effort to find a very personal touch for that particular country that they're going to, or city domestically. We've done that many times, and it's been received very well.
That's a great one. I remember on my interview when they flew me here to Michigan, right? I'd never been to Michigan before, and they had a little cheese and fruit plate. But then the CEO also put a bottle of Michigan Riesling in my fridge. So after I got off the flight, me and the wife popped out. We're like, "Hey, Michigan ain't so bad." Our first impression was the wine, right? Hey, this ain't so bad, right? And if my kid would have had a Paw Patrol toy on the bed, man, it would have been a
yeah. My kids could eat.
They probably could have saved 10 grand on the offer. Just kidding. Brian Rivers says hello from California. Gents, what's up, Brian? First Tech.
Hi, Brian.
Shelley, let's see here. Shelley's loving it here.
That's great.
How do the global nomads contribute to a home country pension social security scheme? Is there an international pension program offered?
Yeah, it's a great question. They do. They can contribute depending on what country they're going to. If they are going to a country where there is a local plan and they are able to contribute to that plan, then we will allow them to. They can continue contributing to their home plan if it's allowed. There's some countries where you're no longer allowed to. We do have an international pension program that we offer where those two others don't exist. So in other words, if there's no scheme available to them, then we will put them in the international plan. Otherwise, we will default to the local plan, whether it's at home or host. The other thing is, in many cases, we'll just do a cash supplement if the business opts out to do that as well. It's a great question.
Yeah, we got a smart global audience here. Let's see, Vinnie Valerde. That is a great point. When we moved to Oregon, our TL provider modified the temp living provider modified the apartment to fit our needs. Like, they knocked down drywall? What they do? The second bathroom. The kids' room had Star Wars and princess decorations. Oh my gosh, Vinnie! You're the most blessed man in relocation, Vinnie. You know that? It was great and made us feel very welcome. Yes, the wine basket was great too.
That's fantastic. I mean, I'm a huge Star Wars fan as it is, and my two boys are all into it now. So I love having them grow up with it and being there with them to watch them. And boy, if I had something like that, that's really cool. And it's very nice that they did that.
Yeah, props to those guys for thinking outside the box there. That's great. Let's see here. Janaina, thank you for the kind words. Kelly, Garan, relationships are everything, both internally and externally. And I think that's just like one of those things where not everybody that sits in the role necessarily has those skill sets, or maybe those types of emotional intelligences to think like that. I mean, you mentioned going over to Singapore and other places, and it was kind of a sales job, job to get them to buy in and everything. And it's something that not all HR folks, comp and ben folks, total rewards folks that might find themselves in a mobility role necessarily have that type of skill set. Is there a thing in your career or a moment or a time or something that influenced you in that area? Or have you always had those types of skill sets?
I think, particularly in that case where we try to really plug and play something and centralize quickly, and it just took a long period of time. It was a change management approach, which became much more of a fact finding. I think my goal in going to Singapore and Dubai and those offices, when we tried to implement some of this, the goal was change management, but instead it became, wow, we really found out a lot of these local practices have been working for years. I mean, and we're 100-year-old company. We've been around a long time, and you can't just go over there and tell them you need to do this now. That is not for a 100-year-old company that used to be split out and not always run by corporate in the U.S. So you have to be very careful and cognizant of, and I think that helped make me realize a lot about the culture of our company, and also the strong people that we have working in those regions that are doing such a good job and taking care of people, not just on the corporate side, but the hotel side. I think, another example that would have helped me through my career was prior, my prior company, like I'd mentioned, we had to go through some cost-cutting measures to our policy, where a lot of our packages were pretty rich internationally. And so we had to standardize a bit across the board. And that's not an easy thing when you're out there and you have to get used to receiving, less allowances or a fraction, or so that kind of, helps put things in perspective and make you as a manager of the program, or a big part of the program that they rely on, just put on a different set of eyes on it, or look through it through a different lens to ensure that they're handheld, through the process.
Awesome. My dad's checking in here. That's great. Love you, man.
Great. That's great. Mr. Cross.
Yep. Janet checking in. Hey, Janet. Love the idea of suppliers being part of the team. I mean, I feel like that's one of the biggest untapped resources. I feel like suppliers. I feel like folks in the global mobility role spend their entire career trying to keep us away, but it's like we have a lot of value to add. You know, to be just
I think what it is, just to touch on it really quick, and then I'll answer Shelley's question. But I think sometimes people who aren't in mobility and have a larger responsibility out there, but don't really know mobility, they're used to having lots of suppliers that they manage, and they may lay the hammer down a little bit more because that's their nature, price and service and all that. And there's two schools of thoughts on it. I think there needs to be a balance, but I also think it's really important to have a good relationship with the suppliers, because you don't want the suppliers being like frantically saying, oh God, I got to go call this client now, and I can't stand them, and they're just so difficult to work with. And you want them to be happy to call that client, and they'll jump on something right away. And believe me, it'll pay dividends to behave that way with the suppliers, I think.
And if
I'm
we
not
know
always right about everything, but that's what I feel.
And if we know that you have our back too, we'll make that call a lot quicker because we can move with more confidence because we know that we're aligned, and we know that when we go back to you and say, hey, this is the way I took care of it. You're going to be like, I like it. Exactly. Perfect.
Yeah. And I know Shelley had a question. I think we lost it, or maybe.
I think Shelley's question, I think we already answered it. It was, oh, you know what? No, this is actually a new question. I'm sorry. You're right. Mark, do your employees prefer their mobility services to be delivered via IT platforms and apps, or do they prefer the more traditional human interaction, telephone, email, etc.?
Another good question. I think it's probably a combination. I think more people probably like the traditional human interaction, more of our folks. And the problem is some of them are very, very busy, so they have to rely on maybe their admin to do some of the expense reporting or things like that. But for the most part, I'd say more traditional human interaction versus and they like to get on the phone. They'll do a FaceTime. They just want to talk to somebody versus the platform and app. I have not seen the platform app thing working as much outside of younger folks in their 20s and 30s.
Well, dude, I mean, like Hilton has a great app, right? And I'm a Diamond member, or at least I was before 2020, right? And I'll go on the Hilton app and I'll check it out, and then I'll still call the Hilton Honors line because I get phenomenal service, and I just want to make sure that she can see things I can't see, and she can do things I can't do, and and I just like that experience, So and then I always get a crack at a Hilton Grand Vacation at the end, so it's always it's nice. It's good.
Sure.
Ryan, which was shout outs, Ryan. Great thoughts, practical information you share with us today. Hey, thank you, Ryan. Ryan sent me a little gift, a little on air love and reload sign there in the background. So appreciate you, Ryan.
Oh, nice.
Jason Rollins, hi guys from Massachusetts. Another great show. Thanks. Viva Van Bakel is chiming in. Great session. Enjoy the insights. World is changing fast. He goes on to say Hilton is an example of how the mobility service industry will change. We have to look at the hotel and airline industry. Interesting. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of consolidation and centralization. I mean, are you seeing that when you speak to other folks at other companies that do the same role?
Yeah, I think most of the folks I speak to, and when I've gone, I miss a lot of the conferences and things that I used to attend because there was so much value I'd get out of them with both interacting with suppliers and corporate. And most of the corporate folks in a lot of the sessions, I always feel at home in those things because I feel like we're all going through the same type of stuff, especially the bigger companies that have been around a long time that were used to doing things a certain way. Getting buy-in on certain, whether it's a new technology, a new process, new policy, it's a challenge because we're small, especially with a big company. We're a very small smidge within the HR umbrella, I think some mobility functions may fall within something other than HR, but most of them are within HR, and we're just a small smidge. So getting the attention of upper leadership to make changes, it comes with it a daunting task of having to put together a lot of business justification, where it's not just going to be a quick answer, but that also makes it fun and interesting, you know, because you can really own your program and try to position it as best as you can. I think that the other pro to that is because we are such a small smidge, we get a lot of empowerment to be able to run the program, as where some of the other things like comp and ben and talent and rewards and recruitment have much more exposure on them. So that's what I like about mobility in a way, is that, you know, we can run the show a bit and just make sure that we're keeping our leaders apprised of what's going on. So
awesome. Hey, shout out to Jamie there. Loves I'm thinking that's the Conrad in Memphis. Is it the Coopers or the Conrad? I don't know. Anyway, Mark Bicocchi, Senior Manager, Global Mobility at Hilton Worldwide. This has been fantastic. You shared so many insights. I want to give you the opportunity just for a final word for our audience out there. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with today?
No, thanks, Ben. You're really talented at this. I think you've got a future and a career at this. I really love what you're doing. It's inspirational because it's connected so many people through the industry. I love meeting people in the industry and have for the last 15 years. So it's really great what you're doing. I really appreciate it. I'm going to be tuning in more. I appreciate the time and everybody chiming in. It's great to see everybody on here, and hope everybody stays safe and well. And feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn or anything if you have any other questions. But appreciate the time and really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate it. Those kind words. I mean, they mean the world. It's so nice to finally have you here. You over-delivered as usual. Thank you so much. I know everybody enjoyed it. Just checking the comments out, people thought it was so insightful. I love the detail you gave. I really appreciate you being so open and candid with us. And thanks to everybody who left a comment, who left a like. If you haven't, please leave a comment, leave a like, share it, let people know, because Mark really dropped some gems out there. So that'd be awesome. Also, subscribe on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube as well, and check in tomorrow. I'd love to have you. Hey, thanks, Mark.